It's time!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of Strikes and Submissions. My name is Dorian Wright. Here with my boy Mike. Mike, how you feeling today?
Dorian, I'm great. To talk about combat sports, there's just so much going on. I mean, we could talk about Jake Paul. We could talk about Diego Sanchez. You name it, we could talk about it. Great to be on with you, buddy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And today we're gonna get right into the meat and potatoes. First up, I know you're the boxing guy, so I'm gonna toss it to you. How you feel about the Canelo fight?
What I would say about the Canelo fight is that this fight should have happened back in 2017, 2018, when both Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders were middleweights, because I think the fight would be more competitive then. But the thing is now, these two were supposed to fight May 2nd, 2020. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic, that had other plans. They ended up pushing the fight back. It never happened until now. What I will say, though, and the reason why I said this fight is about 2 to 3 years too late is just because at that time, Billy Joe was more filled out at 160. And then Billy Joe he was suspended, moved up to light heavyweight at one point, and then he went down to super middleweight, won a title in May 2019. But Canelo has had enough time on his hands in the super middleweight division to catch up and make that ground. From a tactical standpoint, though, I don't see anyone getting knocked out. I know people tune into Canelo's fights to see that. I don't see that happening. And also, I don't see Billy Joe landing a clean punch on him either that will really rock him, because Billy Joe only has 14 knockouts out of 30 wins. So I don't really see it going that way. But what I will say, though, Canelo will show why he is the pound for pound best boxer in the world. The guy is terrific at any weight class you put him at. Won a world title at light heavyweight. He did a ton of damage at junior middleweight, and now he is showing what type of elite level fighter he truly is at super middleweight, which, by the way, is not an easy division to capture world title at. I'll say this, though, Dorian. Of all the opponents, in particular of all the champions at 168 pounds, Billy Joe Saunders is probably the most challenging, because you could put him up against their Callum Smith, David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, all those guys. Billy Joe Saunders is more crafty than they are, and I think he's more skilled. So if anything, he will be more of a challenge, but still, it's Canelo Alvarez we're talking about here, Dorian. I don't see a way Canelo Alvarez loses this fight. I don't.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it all, man. To be honest, but yeah, it's Canelo. I don't see anybody beating him. Any weight class, like you said, he's a world champion for a reason. He's the best in the world for a reason. I think that Canelo goes out, gets it done. Like you said, I don't think it'll be a knockout. And if it is, then hey, everybody get their money's worth. Everybody likes to see knockouts. So, real quick, just wanted to touch on, speaking of knockouts, a knockout artist, Diego Sanchez. What do you think is going on with him, man? Like, I've heard a lot of crazy things. He thinks the UFC is trying out to get him, trying to kill him. They released him, said his manager was crazy. Um, he did like a 45-minute interview just talking about some of the things that the UFC has done. And how do you feel about everything that's going on?
This pains me. There's no other way, Dorian, because Diego Sanchez, whether you like it or not, he's a pioneer in the sport. Look at what he did on The Ultimate Fighter.
The first ever one, too. The most
Exactly.
important one that got them the TV deals.
He's an OG. When it comes in the sport, this guy is an original, and he needs to be treated like that. So when we're talking about this controversy and everything bad that's happened in his career recently, I don't want anyone to forget how much of a legend this guy is, because that is what he is. And even recently, I know a lot of people are saying that, his career has been in a down spiral, which it has to a certain extent. But when they put him in there against younger guys that the UFC just expected to just roll right over an older Diego Sanchez, he fought his ground. Look at what he did to Mickey Gall. A lot of people thought Mickey Gall was just going to go in there and just steamroll him. That didn't happen. But the one problem is the trainer. I don't know what happened since he left Jackson Wink and the other places he was at, but his career path just isn't what it should have been to close out his career. And I know Conor McGregor tried to do him a solid last year by campaigning with Dana to get a fight. But at the end of the day, Diego just didn't deserve it because his camp, everything that's going around with him just doesn't make sense at this point. And I feel for the guy because I know how much he loves this sport. But for him to tweet out freedom and act like he's better than the UFC and that it's the right place for him to move on, again, from an optics standpoint, it's a terrible look.
Well, I don't think he was tweeting that out as in like, oh, he's free from the UFC. It's so bad. I think he was just free from the situation that was held over him. I feel like he really think the UFC kind of held their stature over him as a human because he said that he's told multiple stories about a lot of crazy things that has happened and transpired. And I even saw one story. BJ Penn had vouched that there was a dead body outside of BJ Penn's hotel room one time, and right before he fought George St. Pierre, and then they forced BJ Penn's manager to bet $40,000 on BJ Penn beating George St. Pierre, and knowing he just saw a dead body 6 hours before he has to fight, walking from his hotel room, and obviously George St. Pierre beat BJ Penn, and obviously the guy lost a lot of money, but to swing the books, it seems like the UFC has done a lot of shady things, and let's be real, a lot of companies do a lot of shady things, and it's not totally bad, but they did give Diego Sanchez a severance package. I believe it was $250,000 from what I've seen reported. So it's not like they just cut him and said, "All right, bye," like they did with other guys, such as Alistair Overeem, you know. And you look at a guy like Junior Dos Santos, he was a champion, and they've done Diego Sanchez a decent job. I don't think they handled his career a little shoddy towards the end. I understand, but you can't stay at the top forever. And he has a whole bunch of performance of the night bonuses, and I'm sure he's not hurting, which is why he thinks it's free, a little bit of freedom to get away from the UFC. And maybe
Wait,
he fights again, and maybe he doesn't.
Dorian, let me ask you a question. Do you think a company like Bellator, PFL, One Championship, do you think they come in and scoop him up?
If they had the right opponent, I feel
Okay.
like they would do it. They're not just going to scoop him up to have him fight some nobody. If he wants to go fight like Michael Van Page, say, I would be interested in that. Like it would be a fun matchups. Diego's gonna blitz him, and MVP is so awkward with his. I don't even know how to describe his fight. So I could see them doing it for like maybe one fight, but I don't see him going on like a title run or anything like that.
No, but I do see him returning to the sport because he was ready to fight Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I do not suspect that he's just going to sit there and retire. I think he still has a little bit left in the gas tank.
Well, let's be honest. Donald Cowboy Cerrone's been kind of just the guy they feed to the wolves lately. If we're being real, they were giving Diego a solid. Say, here's your last fight. Here, take Cowboy. You and Cowboy are both OGs. Here, do it here. And the manager did some whatever he did and got Diego cut before the fight, but he's now fighting Alex Moreno, so that's gonna be a good fight. Um, but yeah, just moving on quickly to TJ Dillashaw and Corey Sandhagen was supposed to be the main event of this weekend's card. Obviously, TJ had the cut on his forehead, or on his eyebrow, excuse me, and had to pull out of the fight. Sandhagen doesn't really want to fight anybody else right now. He already thinks he should be fighting for the championship, which I'm all for. He lost to Aljo, but he's been killing since. Wheel kicks, flying knees, you name it, against great fighters, elite of the elite. TJ's obviously coming back from the suspension. I think that if they have to rebook that fight, I don't want to see Sandhagen in there with anybody else. And obviously with the champion Aljamain Sterling and you know Peter Yan holding things up at the top, that's the only fight we really want to see. Let's be honest, that's the only fight we want to see. So, what do you feel about that?
My take on this is that everything happened as a result of the March 6th fight with Piotr Jan getting the title stripped away from him with the DQ and then Aljamain Sterling becoming the champion. Put it this way, Dorian. If Piotr Jan would have won that fight, there would be no TJ Dillashaw Corey Sandhagen fight, at least in my opinion, because Corey Sandhagen, just a few weeks prior, flying kneed Frankie Edgar. So obviously, Corey Sandhagen deserved that title shot, but it was just too long for him to wait. And I also think because TJ Dillashaw's 2-year suspension came up and he was the former champion, they wanted to throw him in there with somebody who was a title contender. So I understand why the UFC is doing it. It could have been avoided, obviously, had it not been for the Piotr Jan situation. But it makes sense, and it makes sense for these two to fight eventually, even if the fight gets pushed back. I heard that June, sometime in June, whether it's early June or late June, after that pay-per-view card, that could be a potential for the next fight. Hopefully that cut heals up for TJ. But either way, though, Dorian, it's going to be a tough fight for TJ Dillashaw because these two used to train together. And Corey Sandhagen, ever since he was choked out by Aljamain Sterling, been a completely different fighter. Like, that's what he needed. It's crazy to say, but he needed to lose in order to get into that next gear. And a lot of guys, when they lose in that fashion, when they're on the precipice of a title shot, they plunder. But Corey Sandhagen did the exact opposite. Knocked out Marlon Moraes. Then Frankie Edgar put him into another millennium. So, look,
Yeah.
Corey Sandhagen is going to give TJ Dillashaw the business. And that's no knock on TJ Dillashaw. But look, you're out 2 years, and then you're going up against a killer like Corey Sandhagen. Good luck. That's all I got to say. Good luck.
So it's clear who you got in that fight. I mean, I think Sandhagen is gonna win, but I think TJ's tough, man. And I get he got suspended and he did what he did. He admitted to it. You know, he did his time. He came back, but that's gonna be a tough fight. I don't know if I'm ready to see who I'm gonna pick yet because I feel like with the delay it could mess up Sandhagen's routine. You know, because I'm sure he was cutting weight trying to get down, and then 2 weeks before the fight, it's like, hey, new opponent, or you got to push the fight back. And speaking of, kind of segueing into our next topic, how do you feel about the Nate Diaz pulling out of the Leon Edwards co-main event, which is going to be 5 rounds?
The injury happened during training camp, which is unfortunate. And the thing is, I think it's the right move because if Nathan Diaz is injured, like he's claiming to be, like his camp said that he is, then push it back. But you know what? My heart goes out to Leon Edwards. This guy cannot catch a break. He can't catch a break. Hamzat Chimaev, 3 times supposed to fight him. Bilal Muhammad, he was dominating that fight. Then the eye poke turned it into a no decision. And then he has essentially the fight of his life prepared for him on May 15th. And then boom, it's taken away. Luckily, though, it's only 4 weeks down the road, but it's 4 weeks too late. I personally would have liked for them to try to keep Leon on the card. But the problem with that is who are you going to find on such short notice? And who's a top caliber guy that could really step in there on short notice? It's few and far between. So, again, I understand why it happened. It's unfortunate. Wish it didn't happen because Leon Edwards, I think, really needed that May fight to get back because he went through a whole training camp just to fight 5+ minutes, had that turned into a no decision. So he's ready to get back. And I just think for him, the longer that he waits could be the shorter that window closes on him for a title shot. It could be. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's not looking too good right now.
Yeah, and it pains me because Leon's one of my favorite fighters, and I have an article coming out about this. Should be coming out soon, either today or tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. But Leon Edwards has had the worst luck of anybody in MMA in the past 2 years. Because remember, he was after he dominates RDA, which usually when you dominate RDA, you get a title shot after that. That's what Kamaru Usman did. Colby Covington beat RDA as well. You get title shots after that. So you You dominate RDA, and then you're booked to fight Tyron Woodley after Usman obviously dominated Woodley. All right, Woodley, here's Leon Edwards. That was going to be a great card. Leon's first time headlining in London, and then everything just happened. COVID, he couldn't fly, travel restrictions, and a whole bunch of things after that. Like you said, the Hamzat fight, and then you even have the Bilal fight, where he pokes him in his eye by accident, throwing a kick, and no decision. But Leon hasn't lost in 9 fights. How many times does he have to who does he have to beat? How many times does he have to win in a row before he gets to the title shot? Is my question. Because he's been beating everybody, and yeah, the Bilal fight ended short, but that first round he looked crisp. There was no ring rust. It was just picking him apart like typical Leon would. And to be honest, I think they're waiting because I think not there. Usman is waiting because he knows Leon is his toughest challenger. I think he wants Leon and Colby to fight. I don't think Usman wants to fight either of those guys at the moment because he knows they're both tough fights and he's gonna have to defend his title twice as much as he would if he just let them fight.
But you know what, Dorian? I think he's a better fighter than he was when he first fought Leon Edwards. That goes without saying.
Of
But
course.
from the last time he fought Colby Covington, I would say he's a much more complete fighter than he was then, too. So, look, as tough as those two fights would be, I don't want to knock the champion because I think if there's anyone in that division who can handle everyone, it's Kamaru Usman. And obviously that goes without
Of
saying
course.
he is the champion. But like when Tyron Woodley was champion, there were a few guys, and oh, by the way, Kamaru Usman was one of them, that were kind of being hand selected to possibly take him out. But I don't necessarily know right now what's going to happen in that June 12th fight. Once that happens, then maybe we can have a different conversation about whether or not Leon. But for me, I just have to see Leon fight a full fight, or at least fight to a stoppage where he
Right.
wins, and
Honestly,
then give him the title shot.
I get that, but I feel like he gave it to Masvidal a second time, and I get what he was saying. I beat this guy now. I'm lapping everybody, so he's gonna go Masvidal. Then I guess Colby or Burns, Colby. If Burns beats Wonder Boy, so that's gonna be a great fight too. If Wonder Boy wins, how do you deny him a title shot? And I think Leon Edwards he has Nate Diaz's number, and I love Nate Diaz because he's one of my favorite fighters growing up. And he's just his arrogance. He'll slap you. What? Like I love that about Nate Diaz. But Leon Edwards is just on another level. And we saw what Masvidal did. We saw what Masvidal did to Nate, and Nate needed some time off after that. So I think Leon is miles ahead of Masvidal. No pun intended. But he that's a fight I think Jorge has. I think all welterweights, I'm going to be honest, I think all welterweights have been ducking Leon Edwards for the past 2 years because there's no way he should be fighting Hazmat Chimaev. There's just no way. And I get it, Chimaev, hype train. No way he should be fighting. He should be in there for a belt or in there for a number one contenders fight. After 8 wins in a row, how many people do you have to beat? I'm asking. That makes no sense to me.
I understand that point, but to your point about Leon Edwards people ducking him, the reason why personally is because I don't think he has the name cachet. And I back in 2019 when he was still active, there was another fighter, Santiago Ponzinibbio, that I kind of lumped in there with Leon Edwards. Two guys, not a lot of name value, but tough, gritty opponents that could one day fight for a title. Now, obviously, you saw what happened with Ponzinibbio. He got knocked out. He's way down the totem pole. But Leon has a good chance. And I think the reason why Leon took that Hamzat fight was because he just needed a date. He needed someone to step in there with so that he could prove to the UFC brass that he belongs in that title conversation, which he is now. I don't see Nathan Diaz beating him,
No.
but also though you have to. I don't think you can dismiss Colby Covington. And the reason why you can't dismiss Colby Covington is that one, he was an interim champion. Two, he was Kamaru Usman's toughest test to this point. And I know he lost. I know he got stopped. But
Right.
on some scorecards, he was up 3-1. Maybe not on my scorecard, but on some, they had him beating Kamaru Usman until that
Yeah.
stoppage. And Colby Covington is a tough fight. So I don't necessarily know at this point in time, 9 days out from, or not even 9 days, now over a month from Leon Edwards' next fight, if I could just hand Leon Edwards the next shot. I don't know if I can leapfrog him just yet. I got to see him fight.
I understand that, and it's not about who you beat; it's who have you beaten lately.
Yeah.
But there's another thing. I mean, Kobe's gonna get the shot, and he hasn't fought since he last beat T Wood, and not for nothing, but we see beating T Wood. T Wood isn't the same. Let's just be honest. We can see the Usman starting with the Usman fight and every fight after. He's just been a little gunshot. Now against Vicente Luque, he came out guns blazing, and I mean, granted, he won fight of the night. That was exciting, but obviously he got choked out. So I mean, speaking of crazy finishes, though, how about that Jiri spinning back elbow on Dominic Reyes? Oh my God. That is, I think, knockout of the year so far. That was the craziest spinning back elbow, the cleanest spinning back elbow I've ever seen landed. And he landed flat on his face. That he was like, there was no need for follow up punches. It was just you knew he knew he was out on the way down.
That Yuri knockout, man. I viscerally yelled when I saw that because
I
what
yelled
a
as
war
well.
that was. What a war that fight was. And I want to talk about Yuri, but I also want to talk about Dom Reyes. And this sport takes no prisoners. Even boxing too. Mixed martial arts, boxing, name any combat sport, take no prisoners. And it's a what have you done lately for me business. It didn't matter that Dom Reyes not that long ago KO'd a former champion in Chris Weidman and then in some eyes beat John Jones. That doesn't matter. Now, if you're Dom Reyes, you're on a 3-fight losing streak and you're looking at your career sideways now. You don't really know where you're headed. So it's just crazy how one fight could change the complexion of two fighters' career. That's exactly what happened in this fight. But now Yuri, he's off to the races because the UFC said, look, the winner of this fight will take on the winner of the championship fight between Jan and Glover later on in the year. One thing though, I do want to note, Dorian, and I'm sure you and I will disagree with this. If Dom Reyes would have won that fight, I would have been okay with him being next in line
Yeah,
because look, he fought John Jones. He even fought for the vacant belt in September against Jan before he was knocked out in that fight. So Dom Reyes would be deserving of it if he won that fight. My one problem is though with Yuri, I think it's too soon. Now in his third fight, he'll be fighting for a title. And I wasn't even a fan of it when people were bringing that up with Hamzat. I think this is a little bit different than boxing. And really, the only example in boxing I could think of is Vasily Lomachenko, who fought for a title in his second pro fight, and he lost to Orlando Salido. And that's boxing. Now, put Yuri Prohaska in there with Jan Blachowicz or Glover Teixeira. Glover, I think he could beat, but Jan, I don't know if he's able to maintain the shots with Jan that he took from Dom. There are levels to this. That's
but
why I think
but
it's a little
but
too soon.
listen to what you said though. You think he can beat Glover, but not Jan, right?
I do, but
So if you think he can beat Glover now, then he should jump everybody in line because Glover was the clear number one contender, I think,
yeah, but
for
I
the
don't even
title.
know. Yeah, but here's the thing though. I don't even know if necessarily he can hands down beat Glover. Personally, the guy he has to fight is Alexander Rakic. I don't know how the UFC is like, oh, cool story, bro. You beat Thiago Santos. Yeah, we're just gonna skip over you. I don't see how that works. I think you have to make these two fight each other, and then they fight the winner.
Well, I think that might be what happens because let's not act like Yuri. I get it's only his second fight, but Michael Chandler's second fight, he's getting a shot at the belt. So the UFC seems to be going in the direction of they're going to get these guys from other organizations. Bro, Yuri has 28 wins and 26 finishes. Like he stops guys every single time he steps in there.
No, I
So
understand that.
you can't just put him with these these guys who shouldn't be fighting for a belt right now, they may not be ready. And I get what you're saying. He has to fight Rakic, but
Look,
Rakic ready.
here's
We
sorry, Dorian, you go.
no, you can go.
Look, I'm just saying because Yuri, he's fought tough guys. I mean, he fought CB Dalloway before he came to the UFC, so he has a proven track record. But you can't compare him to someone like Michael Chandler, who was a phenomenal NCAA wrestler and then was a champion in Bellator, was the face of Bellator for almost the last decade. So to me, I can't really compare those two. And for Yuri, don't get me wrong, as talented as they come, deserve to be ranked number 5. But I just can't allow. For me, I can't get past Yuri Prohaska just leapfrogging Alexander Rakic when Alexander Rakic has been on a tear. I just can't do that.
Okay, I mean, I get it, but you have to also understand the same reason why Leon's getting skipped over. Like you say, it's what have you done for me lately? He's stopped Ozdemir and then he just stopped Reyes. Like those are two huge names. I mean, Rakic has been getting decision wins. Let's be real. So are we gonna go with the flashy guy who has the super long ponytail and Herb Dean has to check his ponytail before the fight? Like that's just funny to me. But
I
like
love it.
he has like a and like it's not a gimmick, it's his real life. He's a martial artist to the purest of forms. So I think it's cool that he gets the shine that he deserves because we've seen guys who have who have shown it to us early, like say Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya. They shown early, like okay, they're stopping guys. They have the it factor. They may not be the biggest of, they may not be the most complete fighters, but they have what it takes, and they've ran through guys and then got the title. You know, but instead of there's not many guys he has to run through if he can knock out Dominic Reyes with a spinning back elbow. I mean, I think Dominic Reyes has proven that he's at the top of the heap. I feel like if you can knock the guy out who's number 2 in the world, then you're now number 2. And anybody below you got something to say, then they got to come see you. And I think Rakic is going to have to come see him if he really wants that. But Jan has already told Yuri that he's going to get the next title shot.
Yeah.
Jan said, "Let me defend against." So what say does Rakic have in it?
He doesn't have any say, but I'm just saying, I'm more so talking about a deserving standpoint, not what's going to happen, because what's going to
Right.
happen is that Yuri is next in line. He's just waiting. But the reason why I personally, I think it makes the most sense for Rakic and Yuri to fight, because look at the recent timetable that Jan Blachowicz has fought, and even Glover. But I'm going to just say Jan wins here, right? I'm just saying Jan because he's the champion,
Right.
not necessarily that I think that's going to happen. They're probably going to end up fighting August or September if I had to guess, because Jan likes time off. Jan also has a kid. So Jan is going to take time to spend with his family. If Jan
Right.
beats Glover, he probably won't fight until the earliest January 2022. So you're going to make Yuri wait 8 months to fight. I don't see how that makes
That's
sense.
true.
Yeah, I
That
think you have to line them up.
I think I think that's true, but I think if man, that's true. But if the UFC finds a way to maybe put an interim belt up
That's true.
and say Rakic goes out and he knocks out another or he knocks somebody out, like, okay, he's clearly the number 1 contender. He's been putting in the work, but we just have Yuri sitting here and Jan said, hey, I'm fighting him next. And obviously, why would Yuri say, why am I fighting you if the champion's calling me out? Which was similar to Masvidal. It's like, I get why Masvidal didn't fight anybody else because after he fought Burns, he called Masvidal out again. He wanted to fight him again. So I get how they go back and forth with the chant, and really that's all you need because it's not about what you know, it's who you know. So if you know the champ wants to fight you, maybe you do wait 8 months.
He will.
And to be honest, I wouldn't be mad at him for that. If the champion's telling you before he even defended against Glover, and to be honest, I think that's a little disrespectful to my man Glover.
It is.
Because, like you said, you're only saying Jan because he's the champ, but Glover might get this one because Glover's not Izzy. He's not going to be. If he looks like he looked against Izzy, then Glover's coming out of there with the belt.
Ooh, ooh. That's a hot take. I don't know if I can get on board with that, but I do think Glover is going to give him a very tough shot. And like I said, I prefaced it by saying I'm only using Jan. But the thing is here, if Jan is telling him, hey, you're going to get the shot, then he is going to get the shot. And you know what? You can't get mad at Yuri for waiting. None of this is Yuri's fault. If anything, the UFC's to blame for this because they're the ones who are handling everything. It's not Yuri's fault whatsoever. Yuri has earned his way to a potential title shot. I'm just saying, I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, but the reason, ironically enough, the reason it's funny that Jan and Izzy's fight came up is because when I look at the pound for pound rankings, I sit back and John Jones is number one. And I'm like, okay, I get that. I think John Jones is the GOAT. So if he's gonna be number one and he's inactive, he dropped his belt. Okay, cool. You vacated the belt. But what does Usman have to do to get the number one spot? How much longer does he have to be to get that? And not even that, because I'm okay with John holding it down at number one. And I'm sure Usman pays heavy respect to John. My thing is this. Israel Adesanya is ranked number 4, right? Deservedly so. How is Jan Blachowicz ranked number 8? And Jan just beat Izzy. And I get it, he moved up in weight, but this is the pound for pound rankings. It's not like they were in the same weight class. That's pound for pound. And Jan beat Izzy. And I get he didn't like dominate him or anything. But if you beat a man, I think you should be ranked higher than him, no?
You would think.
You would think, like, what else does he? And I get it was his first title defense against a middleweight, so it looks away. I totally understand that, but it's not his fault. John Jones vacated the belt, or maybe it is his fault. People saying like, "Hey, John, the light heavyweights are catching up to you. You better move up." So maybe somebody got in his ear. Now he's moving up to heavyweight, and he's stalling out on the Francis fight. If John stays inactive until Francis wants to fight, what do you say, August or July, late July and August?
I think it was August.
Francis would be ready to fight. That'd be almost like years without fighting for John Jones. And granted, he's came off of layoffs, usually to his own doing, which again, this is similar to his own doing, but he's building his body up to heavyweight, which I totally understand. Especially to fight Francis. Francis is cutting to make that 265. So, man, I just have a problem with the pound for pound rankings, and I don't get how a guy like Izzy can be ranked over Jan. And Jan just beat Izzy. What do you think about that, man? What are your thoughts?
It doesn't make sense. And let me start off by saying John Jones is the best fighter in the UFC, but for a pound for pound ranking list, which is this, he's not number one because for me, activity weighs into this heavily. Kamaru Usman has been very active recently. John Jones hasn't fought since February 2020, back when he fought Dom Reyes. That's almost a year and a half to this point. And then by the next time he fights, whether it's August, it's going to be almost 2 years.
And people thought he lost that fight. A lot of people thought he lost. I didn't, but a lot of people did, depending on how you gave out the third round. But
yeah, he didn't look great.
Yeah, why isn't Dominic Reyes at 6 or something like that?
And the reason why this list befuddles me, well, first off, I would put Kamaru Usman number one because Khabib Nurmagomedov is no longer there, and Kamaru Usman has been the most dominant champion aside from Khabib. So I think you got to put him number one. I'm not mad if you put John number two. I'm not even really mad that John is number one. I understand why, because he is the best fighter, but in terms of pound for pound, I think you have to put Kamaru there. One thing I do want to mention, though, and it goes to your point where Izzy was over Jan, even though Jan beat Izzy. Alexander Volkanovski is 3. Max Holloway, 9. Look, I love me some Alexander Volkanovski, but the third best guy in the UFC over Francis, over Jan, I don't know. Because last I checked, I don't even know if he beat Max Holloway the last fight. That was an iffy decision. So for me,
Right.
just to put Alexander
Both picked
Volkanovski third, I don't think I could do that.
I feel you with that one, and I think my I I agree with you because I don't think he got the first fight. I watched it back. I think Volk might have edged him. The second fight, I thought Max clearly won.
Yeah.
But I think if you can give Max, and I think highly of Max, I think he's the featherweight goat in my opinion. But if you can give Max two debatable fights, you should be near him in the pound for pound. I don't think he should be over Izzy or Francis or even Poirier for that matter.
Yeah.
But or Stipe. Now that I'm looking at it, he can be over Jan. I'll give him over Jan because he beat Max twice. So if you can, granted, I don't agree with one of the decisions, but he did it. It's not his fault how the judges judged it. You know, so I'm just of the ilk that if you want to be the champ, you have to beat the champ. And if you can't definitively beat the champ, then that's not your belt. And if you do get it like that, then you have to rematch. And then they did rematch, and then I thought he really lost the second one, and I'm just thinking to my head like those leg kicks weren't really worth it. Like Max is still moving, Max is still active, and I don't know, but you're right actually. And a guy like Habib being number one in the pound for pound rankings, I did have a little problem with. I'm not gonna lie
Hmm.
because I love Habib, but at the time he had, and not to his choosing, of course, because the pandemic affected everybody, and of course he lost his father. I wouldn't say that about him if I thought it was like that, but he never fought Tony Ferguson. That bothers me. I think to be number one, you have to solidify I'm the best in my division first and foremost. And I get it. Tony lost to Gaethje. That's just how the cookie crumbles. But they tried to book that fight 100,000 times, Mike, and it just never happened. And everybody says Khabib will just run through Tony like he did everybody else, and maybe that's what happens. But with John, there's not one person you're like, hey, I wonder if John could beat any. No, he beat everybody in light heavyweight. Granted, you can say Jan now, or you know, I remember when Johnny Walker was the hot thing, and then it was just like, Corey Anderson, and then you look at Corey Anderson, oh, like, can he get it away from John? Can he get it from John Jones? And then Jan knocks Corey Anderson out, and then after that, John Jones is just like I'm going up to heavyweight, so here you go, Jan, you can have the belt. And not that anyone really does anyone really want to see John Jones versus Jan? Nobody wants to see that. So I think Usman clearing out the division, granted, not Wonder Boy, but that's not his fault. They just haven't fought. Wonder Boy's been on the bad end of a couple fights recently, but he did bounce back in his last fight, and hopefully he can bounce back against Gilbert Burns if he wants that title shot. Um, well, not really bounce back, keep the ball rolling. Uh, but what do you think about Usman being over Khabib in the pound for pound rankings, just based off the sole fact that Usman's cleared out the division? And granted, I think Leon's built himself back up clearly as a different fighter as well, like you were saying. But man, other than Wonder Boy, who hasn't he beat? He beat Woodley, he beat Masvidal, he beat Colby, he beat Burns, he beat Masvidal again. You know, Izzy is overrated. Wow.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Chipper. We're gonna say this: if you think Izzy is overrated, who do you think at middleweight's gonna beat him? Because he has Marvin Vettori coming up, and Mike, I don't know how you feel about it, but Izzy's coming back with a vengeance. So if you think he's overrated now, watch what he does to Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, I want to say this. I do not want to be the next opponent that has to get in there with Israel Adesanya. I don't care who it is. And the reason why is because Israel knows that his legacy is on the line now. If he really wants to go down as one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, he has to win his next fight to prove that he might be the greatest middleweight champion of all time. I would say he's well on his way to surpass Anderson Silva. He's not there yet, but he is on his way. But he has to win this next fight, and I think if he wins this fight, he has to beat Robert Whittaker, which is no easy task as well. But he's not overrated, though.
I mean, he stopped Robert Whitaker, and actually, he just did a breakdown on his YouTube about it. He just like walking you through how he did it. He did one against him against Gastelum. Like he does a lot of breakdowns, and me as the competitor, I'm like, why would you be giving away your not your game plan? He's just telling it how it is, you know. But like, why would you even give people the option to see it how you see it? Like, I think Israel is such a unique fighter, and he's such a unique striker. And I think Anderson Silva is still the middleweight goat. Izzy has a long way to go, but yeah, he is on his way. I don't think losing to Jan at 205 affects his legacy as much as people think, because even George St. Pierre lost. Um, I think that if you're Izzy, you kind of just have to, like you said, beat Robert Whitaker again, but he has to beat Vittori again. He's pretty much cleared out the top of his division. So
The way I see it though is that for Izzy, I just see Izzy cementing his legacy in the near future, especially with Vittori, because the problem with the Vittori fight is that there are too many parallels to the last time they fought, because that last fight was in Glendale, Arizona. This one in Glendale, Arizona, and that was, maybe aside from Gastelum and maybe another fight I'm forgetting, that was his closest fight. It was a split decision victory for Adesanya. Vittori feels like he won it. I think it's time for Israel Adesanya to put the Marvin Vittori talk to bed. Put it to bed. I think he's going to go out there and try to get a finish. I think that's what he's looking for, because he does not want to leave any stone unturned, especially with the fact that the UFC tried to give this fight to Robert Whitaker. They actually passed up on Vittori, went to Whitaker. Logistically, Whitaker couldn't do it again, and God bless him for even considering it with all of the travel restrictions. He couldn't do it. Vittori stepped up to the plate. I think Israel Adesanya, I really think he has a shot to dominate Marvin Vittori and make this a completely different fight, because rematches, although you can compare it to the first fight, there is going to be a level and an element of change, especially since these two fought well over 3 years ago. And both of these guys are completely different fighters. So personally, my take is that Israel Adesanya is really trying to get to that Robert Whitaker fight, because Whitaker still wants that fight, whether he wants to say it or not. Whitaker wants that fight, and I think deep down, Israel wants that fight as well, because it's the biggest fight in the middleweight division for him currently.
yeah, and I also think that he he already knocked out Whitaker, and granted, he didn't knock out Vittori. I think that's what he's aiming to do now. If you knock these guys out, there's no doubt you're the top dog. And I saw Max said that Usman would be, or Izzy would be pound for pound if he, gets another couple dubs. But I think it's hard for me to say Izzy is pound for pound number one when I just saw him get beat, and that was just my point. So, Mike, I mean, we touched on a lot today, man.
We
Is there
did.
anything else you want to touch on?
Quickly, can we talk about Jake Paul?
I, I, I saw that video, and I love Floyd. I think, well, not I think, Floyd is my favorite athlete of all time. I just think he stands for something so much greater. But in my opinion, I think that was staged. I think he's doing that with Logan Paul's brother, and Logan Paul is probably recording it. But it's nasty to see the clout chasing that these dudes have to do to sell a fight. And Floyd doesn't have to do it to sell the fight. That's what I don't get. I think it's just the fact that who he's fighting. It's like, why would you even want to fight, a YouTuber who has two pro fights, three pro fights, like, and they're really not even pros he's fighting against. He's fighting against other YouTubers. So I don't know, man.
I don't think it was clout chasing, or at least from Floyd's point of view. For Jake, obviously, Floyd, because I watched the press conference, or it was like an Instagram live. Floyd said he was going to take on both Paul brothers on June 6th, and that's why Jake interrupted his interview, and then everything hit the fan. But my point of view, my take on this is that Floyd is serious, especially with Jake Paul. I don't think that was staged, or at least the scrum that was not staged, because there was one point where Floyd literally said, like, "I will kill him," and he was serious. He wasn't joking around. And I want to put this out there: Floyd is not the one to play with, guys. He's not. I know since the Oscar De La Hoya fight back in 2007, which the anniversary was just yesterday of that fight, that he's Floyd Money Mayweather. He's no longer Pretty Boy Floyd. He's flaunting his money in your face, and people love to hate on him for that. But look, Floyd's the greatest boxer of all time. You do not want any problems, especially with all of his security guards. What are you going to do, Jake Paul, with 400-pound security guards? You're going to do nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And the thing was, like, he didn't even, like, it's not like he pushed Floyd or he tried to be tough. He did some, like, oh,
Got your
I got
hat.
your hat,
Uh,
bye, and
it's
tried
great
to
though.
run.
I love
But
it.
he tried to run. You're surrounded in a crowd by security and your whole team's behind you. Where are you running to? That's why I think it was a little clout chasey, and I wouldn't put that on Floyd. I
No.
don't think Floyd was doing that. I think Jake Paul just has. I think a lot of things Jake Paul just has set up. And he said sign the contract, line this bum up. Like, he'll beat Logan Paul and Jake Paul. I'm not exaggerating, in the same night, back to back.
He
And it
could.
wouldn't be close in either fight. He could knock him out if he wanted in any round he wants. He can take both of them to decision if he wants. He can do whatever he wants to them. We know Floyd's the GOAT. There's no reason to take his hat and try to run away. Where are you going?
It's
In a
hilarious
full
though,
crowd.
Dorian. It's hilarious. And you know what? Let me bring this up. Jake Paul, a master marketer again, because
Oh
guess
yeah.
what? Everyone's talking about it. Even though he got a black eye and Floyd punched him in the face and he just got dominated and had to be shoved into a closet, the guy knows what he's doing. And you know what? He might be lining himself up for a future fight with Floyd. It's masterful what Jake Paul has been able to do. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, just his brother getting the Floyd fight in general, I think is huge. And it's funny because, and we can end on this, but it's funny because Floyd had the fight with Logan Paul scheduled, and then they canceled it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was probably because Floyd was thinking, like, let's see if Jake Paul really got hands and see if he can really fight before I try to fight his brother. Because if he gets beat up by Ben Askren, I'm not getting in the ring with his brother. But, viral knockout, it got a lot of attention. All of a sudden, boom, Floyd and Logan Paul back on. So I don't know. That obviously Floyd's gonna make money, and I'm never mad at him making millions of dollars for beating up guys he could do right now with no training camp. Like, he's probably not gonna train for him. Logan Paul has 35, 40 pounds on him. Like, this isn't gonna be close. He's gonna fight Jake Paul after for another 10, 15 million. And congratulations to Floyd. We love to see it. But man, I think there's one thing I do want to end on with Floyd. He can step in the ring with Canelo again and get 100 times the money.
No, he wouldn't. No, I don't think he would. I don't think he would. I think Logan. I think Logan's his biggest payday right now. I don't
Well,
know. I don't know if Canelo would generate that money, especially with Canelo leaving Golden Boy. I don't know.
he could fight Oscar De La Hoya and get a lot more money than this.
Yeah, but Floyd might be getting at a minimum 100 million, and then add in the Showtime pay per view on top of that. He might be closing in on 300 like he did against McGregor.
I, do we believe this is doing 300 million?
I don't know, but I think he's going to at least get 100 because Floyd would not accept the fight if he's not getting 100 million. I don't think he would.
Yeah, you're right. That's money for a reason. I don't even know I'm talking down on his name like that. I don't even know I'm doing it, but
That's all I got to say though, because I know we want to wrap soon. But yeah,
yeah,
it's comical. I love it. I love it.
it's good entertainment. We all love to see it. We want to see, and I want to see Floyd get in the ring with him and knock him out. Who cares? I'll watch it. Whatever. I'm a fan. So, guys, we're gonna wrap up now. This has been Strikes and Submissions. Hashtag no decisions. Follow me right there. Do right _ Michael Daly. How you feeling, my brother? Let's get out of here.
Yep, let's get out on that note. A great show.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you guys next week at 7 o'clock. Catch you.